Welcome to the CVT Nuggets for designing and implementing server infrastructure. This nugget about upgrading your environment. Some considerations that you're going to need to take before you take your old 2008 or 2003 or man, I don't know. Do you have a Windows 2000 system out there? Hey, that was where my original MCSE was from, and boy, that was a lot of fun. The first time you got to work with Active Directory, but I digress. I'm taking a trip back into memory lane there. But if you are going to be upgrading your environment, there's a couple of things you need to consider, not only from an exam perspective, but in real world or OTJ, on the job. And we're going to show you one of the best tools you can use for that, and also talk to you a little bit about the difference between migration and upgrade. When moving your system from an older system to a newer system, in this case, we're all upgrading to Windows Server 2012 R2. There's some things that you need to think about before you do that in upgrading or migrating, as we're going to talk about. What are the requirements and some of the existing environments that will do an in-place upgrade versus having to do a migration. We'll talk about the tools you can use. There's one primary one, and that's the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit, or MAP. And I'll actually show you MAP in all its glory and some of the things you can do with it, and even show you a sample of one of the reports that can actually be kicked out by those. And I think you'll find that pretty cool. Then there, of course, is do we do a cloud environment versus on-premises? And when, of course, I say cloud, we're talking about as of the recording of this nugget, because they like changing names to Azure, Microsoft Azure. How do I know that? Well, because I do link training, and most of you, if you've taken my link server 2013, you know that they've now changed it to now Skype for Business. Yes, I know. So that's why I'm now careful to say the name as of right now in Microsoft is Azure, but it could change at any point in time. Who knows? But we'll talk a little bit about what gives us some advantages of here, or what do we need to do in order to do on-premises. One of the things you need to take into account and you need to consider is obviously the physical boxes that you're going to be placing your Windows Server 2012 upon. Whether it's going to be a host and then you're going to add a whole bunch of virtual machines, or whether you're going to just stick Windows Server 2012 on one box, a physical box. One of the things you obviously need to have is a 64-bit architecture. This is Microsoft's minimum, by the way, requirements. 1.4 gigahertz on your processor speed. They want to have at least half a gigs of memory there to run on your system, and they say 32 gigabytes of hard drive space. And that pretty much, if you ran something on there, it would sit there and smile at you and say, welcome to Windows Server 2012. Don't even think about doing anything on this, right? So I've gone ahead and put together Chris's recommendations. Obviously, the 64-bit architecture is that's non-negotiable. You need to be able to do that. But I talked to a couple of friends of mine that work for some companies. You might have heard of these little small companies, Intel and Wells Fargo. Yeah, those guys. They're running huge systems, and they say we don't even think about something less than 2.2 gigahertz, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and then of course 250 gigabytes of hard drive space. Obviously, if you're going to be running something like Exchange or SQL, or Squeal as Brian Alderman likes to say it, these numbers need to obviously go way high up. Now the good news is hard drive space, hard disks, storage is pretty dirt cheap these days, and so to jump up to terabyte drives and throw a couple into a system is not the price killer that it used to be when you're like, oh gosh, putting another hard drive in is going to cost me the bank. In fact, I think most of the time if you just cut your cappuccino budget down a little bit every month, you should be able to get a couple of these. Now, we'll also notice that with the software that you're going to install, the good news is in the old editions of Windows Server, basically you had standard, you had enterprise, you had data center editions and everything else. Well, here's the good news. Enterprise, and not even a consideration now. Here's what you got. You've got standard, you've got data center, foundation, and essentials. And basically, the one that you're going to want to think about is if you have any number of users that are going to be connecting to a server that is going to be 25, so basically greater than 25, these are the ones you're going to want to use, standard and data center. Now, what's the big difference between standard and data center? Anyone? Bueller? Here, if you're going to be using standard, basically you get 2 virtual machines that you can run, okay, for licensing. But data center, you get This is an infinity loop, okay? You get unlimited virtualization if you're running data center, which is why on my machine I'm running data center, because I have a whole bunch of VMs that I'm always running like that. So just some consideration on that. What type of additions? Obviously, you can go out to Microsoft's website and take a look at it. Plus, when I look at the map, that Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit, it will actually tell you, based upon the feedback and the things that come from doing that design, that it'll say you're going to need this type of software in order to handle those type of virtual machines and or type of users that are connecting up to your server. The age-old question from the dawn of time, right, as an IT professional, do we upgrade or do we migrate? Well, obviously we'll talk a little bit more about this in the next nugget, but the thing that you need to think about is that an upgrade is going to preserve all your files, your settings, your applications that are already installed on your original server. That's why, here's your box and you've got your apps on here, you got your files, you've got all of the the settings. You have everything nice in place, and let's say you're running Windows 2K8, 2008, and you go, okay, and by the way, it'll have to be Service Pack 2 on that. It'll say, all right, we're now upgrading, dun, 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 dun. Now we're running 2012 R2. Yay, and that's good. By the way, you can do that by upgrading from Windows Server 2008 Service Pack 2 or R2, any version of Windows Server 2008 R2. Now here's the little dealio though. You can only upgrade to the same or a newer edition. So in the case, let's say you have, this one's a Windows 2008, of course, Service Pack 2, and you're running Windows Server 2008 Standard. Well, you can only upgrade to the same or a newer edition. So you can do to that, or you can go up to the Windows Server 2012 Standard or R2 standard, something like that, or 2012 R2 standard. So those are just some things to kind of consider, because I mean, remember you had like Windows Web Server 2008, you had the Server 2008 Data Center, you have Enterprise, you've got Standard. Well, Standard and Enterprise, they can go to Standard or Data Center. Data Center can only go to Data Center. You can't go back down. That's the thing. So remember, you can go to the same, or you can go to a newer edition. By the way, obviously requires your same processor architecture as well. Now you might be saying to yourself, okay, why would I want to go and migrate? Well, you're going to use migration when you're going from something like, as you can see here, get my pen to work here, it's going on thing, like you're going from an x86 version of Windows Server. I mean, it's not the 64-bit, so that's going to be things like Windows Server 2003. So you got 2003, you've got 2003, by the way, R2, and think about this, 2008 running x86, because you had that, or even 2008 R2 also running the x86. Now what you'll want to do to get all of your files and your information, the settings from the computers, you are going to have to run the Windows Server migration tools that will help you with that. And server migration tools, just go on up to Microsoft and it'll give you all the tools that you need that system. And it's a feature, by the way, that can be running. And notice you're going to be running that now over here because this is an x86. You're now going to be running over to an x64 because remember, 2012 R2 x64 is required. Here's the tool that I think is awesome. And by the way, whether you're going to want to upgrade or migrate, the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit is your friend because, number one, it shows you some of the things that you're going to have to do. So you might consider migration instead of an in-place upgrade, especially bing, 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 small toilet room, when you cannot have servers go down, server unavailability. Data can't be inaccessible. Remember, when you're doing an upgrade, those machines, those systems, virtual or physical, are not available. And so you go, well, we can do it over the weekend. Maybe you can't do it over the weekend. Maybe you're a 24/7 shop and you need to keep it up. Well, then, guess what? You're going to need to do a migration. And so by knowing this, you can then come in here, use the map toolkit, and it's going to help you out. So think about this. You're going to deploy servers with Windows Server 2012 operating installed, and it's not going to affect the current infrastructure. Because once you install it, you can do all the testing. driver, system performance tests, and then you can put that server into the domain. Then you can move everything over as you need to. That's why migration can sometimes, even if you have the correct machines, even if you have the correct licensing structure and you're moving everything correctly, do you want to turn those machines off or have them go through the setup process and bring them down out of your system? That's, might be an important thing to consider. All right, back to the planning tool, the map. Love it. It's kind of like Dora the Explorer, right? I'm the map, I'm the map, I'm the map. Sorry, I have kids, so I had to watch that, especially my daughter. Very happy with Dora. In fact, I had a birthday party just for that. The map is just as helpful here in our Windows environment as it is to Dora the Explorer to find out where she needs to go. This case, where do we need to go in our environment? We can do everything from cloud assessment, desktop, server, so you can do just cloud, just desktop, just server. Hey, we want to virtualize all our desktops. Not a problem. Okay, sounds good. Do the VDI stuff, Windows Thin PC, capacity planning, server virtualization. We're going to put all our servers up on physical hosts, and that way we don't have as many boxes that we have to do. Databases, usage tracking, and the actual environment itself, which gives you inventory results, which might be important. Notice in this particular environment that I haven't done something very important, which is before you can run these great little assessment tools, you need to do inventory. You got to get inventory data. And if you were doing performance metrics, you need performance data as well. In that case, you just come up here, you click on Perform an Inventory, and then it's going to run you through the different inventory collection scenarios. Now, I'm going to not walk you through this too much because it's a wizard. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful wizard of Microsoft. And it is a very self-explanatory. It tells you what you're going to do from discovery methods to Active Directory credentials if you need to use that. In this case, let's say I'm running on a work group. So you would disconnect the Active Directory. Let's say I just want to scan an IP address range. I'm not going to use Windows networking protocols and SCCM. And then when you do that, you just put in, literally, you can say 172.16.0.51. and tab over there 172.16.0.80. Okay, that's about 30 addresses, and it says, all right, sounds good. You can come in here. It says, all right, I'm going to use the administrator account credentials. Here's the order that they will run in this particular case, PowerShell, those kind of things, and you can move these up and down. Connection properties, PowerShell, go ahead and use SSL if you want, and then you can do that kind of a thing. And then go ahead and click Next, and then it's going to say, all right, here's all the stuff that we do, and then if I had done this correctly, I probably missed a step right here. You click Finish, and off it runs to the races, okay? So, and are there any errors and everything? Oh, wait, you haven't selected anything. You haven't done this. You got to do, I haven't given credentials, and so it will bark at you if you're doing something wrong. So no, I'm not going to do it. Now what I am going to do is open up an actual report that has been run here in Microsoft Excel. And so in this case, you click on the very first tab here. Notice you got your tabs down here with all kinds of great reports. This is for using consolidating devices, and I'm going to do it in a virtualized environment. I'm going to use Microsoft Hyper-V technology. I want to consolidate computers down into maybe one box, or maybe even devices that are running multiple things, but yet why not just put all of it on one virtual machine? Well, then it'll go through and it'll tell you how many devices you have, how many have returned information, who have failed, they're asking, going, hey, 394 devices think, yeah, let's consolidate that server that are placed into a host, how many hosts are going to be required. So you get a nice summary report, right? So that's kind of cool, and you can look at all that. And then you can, and by the way, if you want to know how it works and why it works and those kind of things, it tells you host machine details that you have right here that you can utilize. You can sort and do all kinds of fun things with that because this is Excel, by the way. Here's your utilization setting, and here's your consolidation recommendations, where it literally says, hey, look, you can use, look, on host 1, let's put all of these machines, host 3, host 4, and it tells you why you can do that, and these are the recommendations. I love the fact, by the way, if you're looking at this, Vista Enterprise down here, I think they have Leonidas, yeah, right here, Fedora. Utilization, or before you virtualize it, this is always good. And then, of course, logical disk utilization, okay, and then you can keep going, by the way. all the different ones. Unplaced machines reports. This is some of the ones that could not be placed and they failed. Why did they fail? It tells you right here. Now, the neat thing about this is, notice this is in Excel, and if you take my Excel series on CBT Nuggets, you'll learn how to take all this information and put it into really cool charts, go to the boss and go, look, this is our utilization. Look, we need to move these over. Look, we need to spend some money so we don't crash the system. That's always good. So that's something that we can use. That's what the map toolkit presents to you. You want to use it in your environment. Now, we just showed you how you can do some virtualization consolidation on your own boxes in your own environment. And by the way, this is not a Microsoft advertising campaign for Windows Azure, but it is an advertising campaign by myself to use infrastructure as a service. You can use this in Windows Azure. You can use this obviously in even Amazon, AWS. You can spin up stuff. Google's going to be enabling you to be able to do those kind of things. So in this case, we're going to use a cloud, or maybe you want to do it on premises. Now, I've got my good friend Jake Ralph here. Here's the Jakester, and he is the IT guy, and he's sitting here on his laptop. See, it's a laptop and his screen, and he's using RSAT to handle the local machine here. He's got some virtual machines. He's running Hyper-V. Maybe he's got also running Linux, and he's running some other things, handling that right there. But now Jake can then switch on over to the Windows Azure portal and check out these machines that he's spinning up right here. So he can deploy the Windows Server 2012 R2 operating system on these virtual machines. They've got boxes here. Do a whole, let's do, he says 5 there, and then he does another 5 over on another machine, just for, or 6 on that machine, and he can just spin those up utilizing his laptop. And the great thing is guess what the Active Directory is over here? cbtnuggets.com. Or maybe he's got the Nugget Lab environment out here, and then he's got the CBT Nuggets, but Nugget Lab is part of the forest for CBT Nuggets, and so you're using Active Directory federations back and forth and all kinds of fun things. Why would it be or instead of and? The only reason why you wouldn't use the cloud is if you have confidential and or proprietary information. And so that's why you might want to be able to just keep everything locked up. So you can do an or you can do an and. You gotta love it. So he could have maybe a box that contains the top secret files of Jake and Kurt's bike riding adventures and stuff like that. I'm just making that up as I go along. Jake's going to probably smack me next time he sees me. But so that's over here at CBT Nuggets, and then everything else is on over here. So if you have some confidential proprietary information, healthcare industry, government kind of things, keep that local and then use your cloud environment, your Windows Azure. That's going to help you when you're designing and implementing your server infrastructure. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for joining me.